things are changing, but we're pretty impatient creatures, at least I am. When you really look at the amount of change in the last 100 years, it's vast.
It's vast.
So I think we have some faith that in the next 20 years, some of this stuff may be more accepted. We may have we're doing brainwave studies now to see what goes on in the brain when somebody does psychokinesis or energy healing, neurophysiologically, what's going on in the heart field. And so things are being measured now much more and creating a chain of causation rather than, oh, this just happened. Now we can see the difference between faking it, fraud, and genuine, even physiologically, in what we're seeing happen in people. And so that amount of data and information will begin to get out. And I think then it'll be easier to believe if you're on the more skeptical side.
Dr. Joel Gallenberger, a clinical psychologist with over 30 years of experience, is a leading expert in human potential and manifestation. A senior trainer at the Monroe Institute, he developed the renowned MC² Manifestation and Creation Squared program and the Sync Creation Home Study course. Through his inner Vegas adventures, Dr. Gallenberger guides participants in exploring psychokinesis, healing, and the power of heart-centered intention to create profound personal and professional transformation. He is also the author of Inner Vegas, a story of miracles, healing, and heart. Welcome to the show, Joe. It's so nice to see you again.
Good to see you again as well.
Thank you. I'm very interested in the work that you do along the lines of psychokinesis. Can you let the audience know what that is and some of the work that you've done with it?
Sure. The word telekinesis and psychokinesis both refer to the same things. The shortest definition you'll see is affecting matter with your mind. I don't like that definition very much because to me the mind is more like the steering wheel of a car. It sets the direction or intention, and then the car goes nowhere without gas.
Without what, sorry?
Any kind of car.
Yes.
So the idea would be that we use the energy of unconditional love as a very high positive energy as the gas for the psychokinesis car, if you will.
Right.
So my definition would be having an intention and letting that intention move through your heart energy to affect physical matter. So this would be things like we've had seed growth of 1.5 inch roots in 2 minutes in our hands. We light light bulbs with our energy and have measured 400 volts off the hands with a voltmeter, bending metal, rolling dice in patterns, affecting slot machines. And it's the same energy to me as energy healing and manifesting work. So in the laboratory, they usually study what's called microkinesis, which would be random number generators, very small movements there. And I've been in the labs at Princeton University and now in University of Virginia. And then macro would be larger events such as rolling dice, etc., and doing slot machines. So I've been working with this for about over 25 years now, Rhonda, and have meditations out, CDs out, and now downloads to help teach people this because it's a great feedback system. The results are immediate. So if you go into an ideal state of wide open heart energy, connected to spirit, grounded to the earth well, in the present moment, feeling high emotions like gratitude and feelings of abundance, you usually get rewarded with money within seconds in a casino. And then if you go into greed for your ego, the money's withdrawn. So we use psychokinesis mainly as a training tool to help people be able to send energy better for healing or for manifesting kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you refer to dice, what are you doing with the dice, and are you using your mind to influence the dice to, let's say, roll double threes or double fours, like just to let the audience know what you're doing with that?
Yeah, so we usually use two die.
Okay.
And in my newest Vegas workshop, it's called Inner Vegas Virtual. People are meeting around the world, and in their homes, we'll have everybody roll 10 rolls each at the same time. And we know statistically that dice should come up as a pair, like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, once in every 6 rolls, if you have a 6-sided die. And so we can easily take how many people times 10 in number of rolls divided by 6, which should be statistically how many doubles we roll. And in the last workshop, for example, we should have rolled 32 by chance. We rolled 61 doubles in those 10 rolls across the group. So that's what we mean by creating a pattern in what usually would be random. In a casino environment, we may be aiming for other particular target numbers where we have bets on them. And then as we hit that target above chance, we tend to do pretty well. And having a financial feedback like that is very exciting. So it helps the energy, which is an excitement type energy. But even without the casino being present, in the workshops, for example, we would aim for doubles or 5 and 9 and just see how many the group gets. And that's one of our ways to help people's belief system stretch a little bit so that they could accept that this is real.
Yes, it's very exciting. And do people, before they shake the die and roll it, they have an intention in their mind of what they want to happen, like double twos or double threes, or do they just... So what intention are they using to influence the dice?
Yeah, so this again is practice on how we would manifest or create the reality we would like.
Right.
So part of that first is having a clear goal. And that can be a little tough in life because, say we're going to college from high school, we might have mixed emotions. We're happy to leave home, but a little scared of leaving home, leaving our current friends, excited to make new ones, but afraid we might not be accepted. So there's this mix of feeling and emotion. The dice is a good place to start because usually we can get a clearer intention first. So yes, we'd be in meditation. We often use brainwave patterning meditations that allow people to move into a deep meditative state within 10 minutes or so, rather than having years of practice in an ashram or something to learn how to meditate. And within that state of reduced ego, open heart, clear thinking, we might have the goal, say, of double. And it might be a double 3, 3 equals 6, if that's what the person would like to aim for. Then, again, with the energy of the heart flowing very strongly, as you would have the dice in your hand, the usual pattern might be thinking of that and visualizing that. So my 3, 3 numbers are difficult psychically. So if I were missing my beer, it might be a 6-pack of beer. If I were hungry, it might be a tin of 6 muffins or 6 dozen eggs in a carton, something that I have a visual representation of what I'm looking for. And then as you let go of the die, you let go of that intention, but you keep the dice in a flow of energy because they're in uncertainty. They're still tumbling down the table until they stop and land. And then you would release the ball of energy you might have around them. So it's this intention plus let go, which is a rhythm in life that's very normal and natural, but can be difficult. If you were going to go to sleep and you go, oh, I think I'm tired, I'll go to bed, and go up and you have the intention, maybe you lay on the bed that you usually would lay on for sleep, and then you think of something else. That's the letting go part. But if I said, okay, you're a pretty good sleeper, and Rhonda, you say, yeah, well, let's put you on TV tonight, and maybe 10 million people are going to watch. But if you can fall asleep in an hour, we'll give you $1 million. It's going to be hard to go to sleep. Now you're efforting, now you're self-conscious. So on these things about energy healing, on manifesting, and PK or psychokinesis, it may be natural, but it also can be very tempting to get ego involved, efforting, things that get in the way. So much of what we teach is how to have very strong intent, but then to let go into this or something better and feeling like you trust the energy to flow. But in our lives, we do a lot. Like when if we're going to eat, we have the intention to take in food. We don't think of every bite. If we're dancing, we don't think exactly where each foot is, or else we're going to be self-conscious. Same for giving a speech. So we're filled with activities we do intention let go with. The thing about these that's challenging is these can feel weird to your belief system, that you can feel it's impossible, you could feel like performance anxiety, and the more at stake, the more difficult it can be. So if it's, I think I'll just buy a scratch ticket for fun, I got $5, that's pretty playful. But if you were saying, I need that ticket to pay my rent for this month, now you're going to be freezing your energy. And so we try to help people when it's more important to still be able to flow. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it sure is. I love it. I remember playing cards in a casino and blackjack, of course. And I found
Okay.
if I just stopped my mind and just focused on what I was doing, that I was way more successful than if I was hoping for, 21, right? And
Okay.
so I've experienced that. So I do understand what you're talking about. So when you talk about the heart and how to get the heart involved and the frequency, how would a person actually be able to do that? Because a lot of people, they have their heart, and most people can't feel their heart beating unless they really concentrate on it. But how would a person involve their heart in that type of getting those types of results?
So there could be many ways. I have a meditation called the Healing Heart, and there's a heart series. Within there, first it would be to relax and let go of daily concerns, then to raise your energy a bit. And then there's some instruction that one person might think of those they love. Remember a video of soldiers returning from war and being reunited with their children, or puppies being born, something. Or they might be more kinesthetic, body focused, and they might begin to feel like a dinner plate sized warmth around their heart. If they're visual, they might visualize a soft glowing light in their heart area. So there'd be different ways. Other people might imagine filling their hands with light and then putting them over their heart to bring that light in. By and large, most of us can do that for a little while, but then in the first negative phone call, we lose it. And so much of this is not just inducing a greater art flow, but sustaining it when life happens, when there is that hassly phone call or whatever it is. There are some images, one I like a lot, I call ocean heart. It would be like your heart is a vast ocean of love. And if I wanted you to come into my life fully, Rhonda, it'd be like you coming in like a hand going in water, just fully enveloped. And then if you left, you would leave and the water goes back to complete. That helps with the idea of fear of loss, brokenheartedness, senses of betrayal that tend to shut down our heart energy from our past experience. So we look for some kind of image like that that allows a person to feel very present, very strong, and in connection, but also not super vulnerable to feeling devastated by those kind of really horrible events. So that kind of image also is very useful right now because our culture is filled with fear and divisiveness, and those things tend to shut down heart energy. I don't think love has an opposite, but fear can cloud love, if you will. And so we work meditatively and in other ways to allow a person to feel very open-hearted and present, even in the midst of turmoil and divisiveness in their family, in their community, in their world. And when you can hold that, then the healing energy can flow, psychokinesis energy can flow, positive manifestations, much more likely. But if you go into fear, it shuts everything down. So one of my favorite sayings is, fear is expensive, love is priceless, choose wisely. I have that on my wall to kind of remember myself to stay out of fear and into more of a loving flow. And the psychokinesis is a great way to practice that because it'll give you feedback whether you're really there or you're just fooling yourself.
Okay. Fear holds a negative energy.
I would say constricted. Fear is
constricted. Yeah.
Fear is normal and useful sometimes. You know, if you get up in the morning and you go to open your car door and you get a large ripple of fear through you that says, "Don't drive today," I'd listen to that. That's protective. But when it is running constantly, we're not built to do that well. When it's more of an anxiety rumination, we're worried about the future or the past, versus being in the present moment, we lose the power quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know myself, I'll get those messages, not, don't get in your car sort of thing, but more subtle messages. And it's easy to ignore them because we're so busy with our present day and what we're doing, is that when those messages come in, we sort of set them to the side. And I'm lucky that they'll come back a couple of times just in case I've missed it and was too busy. What is your advice on that? And have you had experience with people not listening and what happened and when they did listen?
Definitely, especially when it's more at the level of a whisper. We'll ignore it, or we might begin to act and somebody changes their mind. The first time I heard the word Starbucks, I got a big glow, and I called my broker, and they had never heard of the company. This is way back, and they looked it up and said, "Oh, they're going to develop coffee shops. That'll never go. So don't invest in that, Joe." Now I know enough that I would at least track it in my journal. I'd buy one share if that felt safe. I'd buy 100 shares or 1,000 shares, whatever felt safe, because if you act on your intuitions, they tend to come more often. But people will ignore it, and sometimes even when it's pretty loud. There was a woman named Gary Carter. She wrote a book called Healing Myself. It was in the Virginia winter. She was taking her kids to school, and as she got in the car, she got one of those strong "don't go" messages. But she felt she had to get them to school, so she did. And there was a very bad accident, and she pretty much had her face destroyed. Didn't know who she was anymore for a while. Went through dozens of surgeries, plastic surgeries, to repair the damage. So that would be maybe an extreme example. Before 9/11, there were people that had the urge to get a haircut that never did during the week. They worked in the Pentagon. Some people had going away parties that weekend that were in the towers. Other people had intuitions to stay away. And some families reported intuitions that weren't honored, and others, people did honor it and survive. So intuition to me is one of our hugest human survival mechanisms, because we don't have claws, big fur, tails to indicate what our emotional state is. Our vision isn't as good as most animals, our sense of smell. But what we do have is strong intuitive qualities. And so I think the Chinese have studied this some. When you look at children in cities, their intuition, their PK is not as flowing as people raised in rural areas. So there's something about modern life, the left brain being so active, maybe all the screen time even, that tends to dull intuition, dull energy flow. But our natural state is quite intuitive, and our tribe in the old days probably would have encouraged us very much to listen to it by stories they told us, etc. Now, not so much.
Well, it's the reason we survived
I think.
this long. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. When you talked about frequency and said that the frequency it's unique to you. So my frequency is unique to me. So is it connected with, what is it connected to in my aura that it's my frequency and not your frequency? Because we can help raise each other's frequencies up, right?
I would say yes. And each person, much like fingerprints, has an energy signature,
Yeah.
but it can be much more varied than a fingerprint stays pretty stable. But as say, if somebody was fairly good at, quote, reading your aura, your energy field, when you are sad or bored or angry or in ecstasy, it would look very different in the different conditions, if you will. Still, there would be probably a way to say that is Rhonda or that is whoever it is, a bit. There's in the culture kind of a feeling sometimes that low vibrations would be bad and high vibrations would be good. I would tend to look at it more like music. Low notes are very useful to give a bass and a solidity and a warmth to music. If you didn't have them, the music would sound very tinny and high. And so from low to high, all of the frequencies in music are valuable, okay? But it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And so in our life, our frequencies as well, the ones that are denser or lower, help us ground to the beautiful Mother Earth and stay there. And then the ones that are higher help us connect with spirit, if you will. And probably one of the better images is to connect both of those together within the heart area. So we're both embodied beings in the physical. That helps us affect the physical. Most of the time when I see somebody who says, oh, I'm very spiritual, but their life is not going well, they're having financial problems, health problems, relationship problems, what's missing is they're not grounded. They don't have the bass notes, if you will. And so then they're out of balance. So the trick of being a human being, our birthright, but also something that it can take some skill to learn, be very much in the present moment and be spirit and flesh at the same time, low notes and high notes at the same time, that we have our whole human spectrum available for us to sing through life rather than just being stuck in one frequency band, if you will. So in general life, we tend to be a little more associated with the grounded signals of doing our taxes and having to wash the dishes and change the beds and whatever else we're doing. And we forget about all the angelic stuff that we could be in touch with. Some people go the other way and, they're very in touch with the spiritual end. They may be a medium or what have you, but they're not very grounded. So for maximum manifestation, I think even body health, psychological health, we look for a balance. And so when we say raise your vibration, we don't mean let go of the low ones and just go high, but rather open to the highest but stay grounded, is the image I like to use.
Boy, you're you're really actually affecting my frequency and my
Okay.
being
Uh-huh.
by, things that you're talking about. And I am very sensitive that way anyway, but I really understand because people who have too high of a frequency, it's hard for them to be grounded. So it's a mindfulness of what your body is doing so that you don't fly away, sort of thing. I was in a workshop, just a small story. I was in a workshop where we were eliciting from each other states of mind. And the person that was working with me, who I knew very well, I'm going to say she was rolling like this when she was eliciting from me. And the instructor saw that from across the room and came running over and grabbed her hand and put it down and said, "Stop that." Because what had happened is I kept raising and raising and raising, and it was really hard after that for me to get grounded. I was young, probably I was in my 30s, later 30s, but it was the first time that I had an experience where I understood from that experience that one had to be very careful of going that high without keeping grounded. And so one of the things that I do, and I want you to talk to this, is I will tap my foot on the floor or tap my feet on the floor to remind myself that I'm still on earth, right? And because I didn't want that to happen again, because there's a feeling of out of controlness
Okay.
and not trusting that might happen again just out of the blue. It could happen. So can you speak
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah. Some people more than others by their genetics, I think, by their culture, by their personality bent are more grounded than others. So
Yes.
some people would have trouble maintaining grounding. Other people have a little more trouble flying, if you will.
Right.
And to look to that balance, usually people are prejudiced toward one thing or the other rather than to the idea of balance. So at Monroe Institute, where I teach, I've taught there for over 35 years, we have these brainwave patterning exercises and meditations we do that allow people to go very high quickly, but we also emphasize the grounding. The same for the meditations on my website. It would start with grounding and end with grounding, and then have a time of strong expansion in the middle, with counsel not to do this while driving or using a chainsaw or those kind of things. So you have the ability to fly and not have to be attending to the physical for a half hour, as deeply. But I would say you can imagine like roots down to the earth for grounding. You could tap your foot. You could do all kinds of things. But if you don't want to be here, if you don't want to be on the planet, because it can be a tough and challenging planet, even before you have trauma individually, thrown at you, then it's going to be hard to be fully grounded the way we're talking. So I use a definition sort of let your emotional body and physical body speak to you freely without repression, be in touch with the earth energies, and then be connected with spirit, so your spirit and flesh at the same time. That kind of grounding, if practiced, begins to be something people will be attracted to because it feels like you're highly intuitive, you're crisp, you're filled with energy, you're highly creative, you're highly effectual, you're able to be centered even if like you're in a plane and there's horrible physical turbulence, or you're at a Thanksgiving dinner with family and it's gone off the rails and people are talking about stuff you don't want to talk about or whatever. You can be the point of not really control, but more dominion of your own self, and centered. The same going to a place like a hospital, which tends to be very uncentering. There's a lot of odd smells and poor food in most of them, unfortunately, and fear going, up and down the halls. And so even to visit somebody, let alone being in the hospital, this grounding kind of activity would come in handy. I'll give you an example. I was going to the dentist a week ago, and I'd had a series of unfortunate events, lots of dental work, and one particular crown had broken twice, and then the temporary came off when I was on the road for a week. And so I was going with a little bit of apprehension, and so I shifted that to, I'm going to move into appreciation for modern dentistry, because I may have had lives where you would die with an infection if you had a bad tooth, and or they would give you a shot of whiskey and then pull it out with the pliers. So this is better. So I looked at the positive, and I went in and I told the dentist, I've been thinking on the way here how much I appreciate your skill and how much you've learned and the beautiful equipment you have. And he was kind of taken aback. Most people, I don't think, approach him that way. And he warmed up and he was more cheerful. The meeting went really smoothly. I have a brand new gold tooth that's way in the back. You can just see it shine when I smile.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and then I went from the dentist to the store, and I bought two $5 lottery tickets. On the first one, scratch tickets, I bought $5 at 120, the other one for $5 at 150. So it was a different energy than I could have gone to the dentist with, which would have been more, are they going to hurt me again? Is this going to be expensive? Is this going to work? Whatever the vibe would be, that would be lower vibration, but it wouldn't be real grounded. Okay? It would be worry, which was taking me out of the present moment and lowering my vibration at the same time. Instead, I celebrated the present moment as involving modern dentistry as opposed to the Middle Ages. And the gratitude opened my heart, and then also allowed some higher vibration to come in. So these things can be kind of complex, even in something as simple as going to the dentist. And we should teach it in grade school. In my opinion, we don't. But once you begin to get the hang of it, you begin to apply it in all those kind of situations. Was that a fairly clear example of maybe how to use it in daily life?
It was excellent. That was excellent. Because, in telling a story, it really resonates and stays with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a story
Sure.
like that does stay with you, is to raise your vibrational frequency. And so with frequency, have you had experience with it actually healing someone? Do you teach that?
Sure. Illness is sacred, in my opinion. There can be times when our ego would think we should have healing where it's not appropriate to happen the way we think it would happen. Example for me, my mom had Alzheimer's. That's the one thing she didn't want to do. After she died, and I communicated with her from the other side and said, what's up with that, Ma? She was saying, well, my dad and I were married 64 years. He had more time on the planet. He needed to do things. If I died quickly, it would have been too much a shock. This way, he learned how to cook and clean, made new friends, did this or that. Then more personally, I had a lot of religious guilt. And my mom said, I figured I'd just forget it all before I went over there so it wouldn't follow me and drag me down as I entered spirit. So she had a plan that ego-wise she would have hated Alzheimer's, but at a spirit level it was appropriate for her at that time. So that's the first thing I would say. But within that, we have folks that have reported, say, second day of workshop being pain-free from post-polio syndrome for the first time in 20 years, or a 20-year history of fibromyalgia and feeling that clears overnight in the workshops. Folks that have gone to clear scans. One fella that had yellowed nails, foot fungus that had been there for a decade, and he woke up with clear nails the next day. So we've had some dramatic physical healings occasionally, and then even if there's something medically going on, that it goes smoother like the dentist. So the last workshop I did, there was somebody from Saudi Arabia, a woman, and she found out she had stage 4 cancer the second day of the workshop. And she was naturally in some fear. She was a young woman. And one of her fears was she didn't have any money to pay for care. And we kept sending good energy, and she stayed calm and trusting over the week. All her scans and doctor appointments went very smoothly, and she ended up by a week or so later being accepted to the best hospital in her country, and all treatment would be free. So you can even combine the energy work with going to physical medicine when it's appropriate, which often it is. If I broke my leg, I'm going to call the ambulance, have them come in and put a rod in there or whatever they got to do. If I were an Aboriginal tribe, there's stories in Australia that they could heal that broken leg overnight. But we don't have that skill set right now. But I see shifts in the physical healing often occur. Maybe easier things like headaches going away quickly, back pain, those type of things, but with some increased attention and energy focus, sometimes it are major events like, and again, this interweaving. I have one exercise, I have meditation called Abundance Waterfall. I had a woman from the United States. She was pronounced terminal here with MS, multiple sclerosis, and instead she went over to Russia and they wiped her whole immune system and reloaded it. And they commented that she did better than they'd seen anybody do because it's a very rigorous treatment. And what she did is listen to that abundance waterfall exercise for 40 days straight, imagining herself in a cascade of health. And she feels that had something to do with her beautiful result. Now, back in the States, the doctors say she's a walking miracle because she's so much improved. I think, we can do a lot to cooperate with our healing, and sometimes all we need is the energy healing. Other times we interweave it with traditional medicine, and both of that can be good.
Mm-hmm. The change in our self-talk and what we view our world to be, negative or positive, determines our reality. But lots of times if we are saying the same things over and over and over again, we don't realize that we're saying them to ourselves. And in saying this to ourselves, it hurts our body. We don't realize that. And so, I'm not really talking about positive thinking, because that can also be fake and just be talking and not feeling it in your body. But this healing where it's the whole body, can you talk a little bit about that, the difference between saying it and being it?
Sure. So culturally, we are designed to listen to our tribe. That's how one of the other things that helps us survive. Yeah. And usually in the tribe, most of the tribe is pretty conservative. And then there might be shamans or other folks that bring in, let's go to a new location, or let's do this or that. But within the conservativeness of the tribe, we've learned things like nothing good comes easy, no pain, no gain, phrases that make it hard for healing to be instant, for example. And we carry those a lot of times even unconsciously. Some of the other beliefs we might have, we could call meta-beliefs. One is our culture is based on survival of the fittest through Darwin, and we built a culture on that. Well, the latest according to Bruce Lipton's work, in biology is there's a tremendous sharing genetically organism to organism, and probably the prime directive of nature is for the good of all. Building a culture on that is very different. When we get more personal, here, say for healing, we may be carrying a belief that I'm a seeker. I'm a seeker of wisdom and all in life. Well, wouldn't you rather be a finder? It's a different energetic. And so if I had the seeker energy and now I need healing, I'm going to mainly put out the energy of seeking healing rather than finding healing. Okay? So we do look at belief quite a bit. And not just, yes, affirmations can come in handy. I have arrived. The physical world is changeable. The spiritual world is solid, constant, real. If the illness has gotten me into sort of a self-loathing pattern, I might say I accept myself as most honored guest in my own heart. Things that I would say till it rings true, and rather than just saying it, as you say, and could be believable, that could facilitate healing energy coming toward me receiving it, and for it to have effects on the body rapidly. So I would be canceling thoughts like nothing good comes easy, no pain no gain, and I'd be substituting positive thinking. And if my mind goes, oh yeah, right, that's not true, then I have to settle back and look at most of what we're taught has an element of truth, but it's overgeneralized. So our myths, like nothing good comes easy, yeah, if you want to be a concert pianist, you're probably going to have to practice a few hours a day. There are exceptions. There's 3-year-olds that get up and play Bach. But in general, that's got a truth to it. But not everything has to be hard. That's the overgeneralization. And so some things can come easy. If you win a lottery ticket, unfortunately, we have a culture that says easy come, easy go. And then, that may be what happens. I've met people where easy came and stayed. They might have won $3 million in the lottery. Now, 10 years later, they have $75 million. They've been investing beautifully. They've been helping other people. It's been a positive in their life. But what the culture will say is more of the stories where the lottery ruined the person. So with healing, we look at that. I had a very dramatic one. One of the exercises I do is called discreate, letting go of patterns no longer serve. And there was a woman with a cyst on her foot, and she just put her fingers there and said, plus dissolve, it went away instantly. There was another woman in the group who had an abscess in the breast, and she tried that and it didn't go away all the way. And so she asked, what was that about? And her guides were saying, well, you're a urological cancer surgeon and you didn't believe it could be instant. And so all her medical training got in the way. So first she dissolved the thoughts that it couldn't be instant, and then it went away fully. So we work with both the thoughts and beliefs and emotions in these situations. But then within that, I've seen some dramatic healings, and other times maybe it's not appropriate for it to shift at this time.
Mm-hmm. Because some of our thoughts, they don't serve us, And the thing is, we don't realize that our thoughts are repetitive, and we don't realize that we can change them. We feel that because most of us live outside of our bodies. We don't live in our bodies, right? And I know when I was outside of my body, and then when I was in my body, I experienced that. And I know when certain things sort of make me jump out, you feel uncomfortable, right? We don't like to feel uncomfortable. And I think that if you can speak to this, I feel that when I'm in my body, which means my soul is happy in my body, I feel that I feel healthier, I feel happier, I feel calmer than when it's out and I'm going from here to there trying to make things happen.
Yes. So if a person feels out of body a bit, and it's a joke up in Monroe, a lot of people go there to have an out-of-body experience, and what they do is have their first in-body experience,
Okay.
as well as out-of-body. But if there's been trauma, sometimes that's being held in the body, our reactions to that, which might be fear or anger or despair or what have you. And the body is protecting us, particularly as children, so we're not overwhelmed. It allows us to stuff a lot of stuff there. Then, as adults, if we go to try to be in body, all of a sudden we get close to touching base with those unsafe feelings emotionally, and we will run away from that and we'll stay out of body. So getting fully in body may involve several things. One would be psychotherapy type of things to help you process the emotions that have been held, to reinterpret and reframe things. Another would be the idea of coming and going from the physical. Paradoxically, if you can go out of body easily, then it's easier to stay in body. My analogy would be if this earth is a beautiful mansion and we're here, but somebody locks us in, now it's a prison. So if you don't have ability to leave the body, then it can feel like you're imprisoned here and you struggle to get out, and you get halfway out, if you will. Once you learn you can come and go and you see the beauty of being here in the mansion of Earth, then you voluntarily want to stay, then you will be more in body, if that makes sense. So that the other people talk about spirit loves to fly and be free. Soul wants to just get deep into the mud and really get here and have a soulful experience of loving through limits and things that we can do on earth, the incredible beauty and sensuality. But everything yin has a drop of yang here. So something as horrible as war also has a drop of courage, sacrifice, what have you. Anything as beautiful as the most gorgeous food also has a drop of potential for gluttony or starvation or what have you. So we can't say, I want the good and not the bad here. It's a polarity system. And why we try to just have the good and not the bad, we will not be in body fully. We have to find a way philosophically, and the religions try to do that, but I think they don't do a particularly good job of it. One will say heaven is somewhere else. One says live in detachment. But if you want to be fully here, you have to figure out a way to feel good about being fully here with all the pain and suffering and all the beauty. And that's a task sometimes that takes a life to learn. My dad, when he was in his late 90s, he would say those 74-year-olds are just pups. They don't know anything yet. And I think what he was referring to is the kind of wisdom that usually comes through something either dramatic early in life, like a near-death experience, but often for other people later in life, where you begin to try to figure out what it is to be on Earth and how can it be so beautiful and so horrible at the same time to be here, the pain and the beauty. But till you come to some real knowing for you of how this makes sense, it's hard to be fully in body, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
So.
You explained things so well. Would you like to talk about your programs and what you offer at the Monroe Institute?
Sure. So I'm a contractor there. I go up about 10 weeks a year. There's many different workshops. I developed one called MC Squared, Manifestation and Creation Squared, where we do the kind of psychokinesis I've talked about. And I have a home study version of that called Sync, S-Y-N-C, Creation, C-R-E-A-T-I-O-N. And that has 3 individual coaching sessions with me. As part of the thing, a bunch of custom meditations that you listen to over headphones to get into these altered states we're talking about. And it's designed to really generate self and other healing, manifestation, and the psychokinesis stuff. So that would be sync creation. I also have a workshop called Inner Vegas Virtual, as we mentioned, that we get people again around the world meeting to play with this stuff. And it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday format with the next week off and the following Sunday also in the workshop. So people get a chance to explore and apply what they learned in the first 3 days of the workshop. And then we have a follow-up. About half of the group, when we have a group like that, go to a casino to practice. Others practice in their work or in their family, the kinds of things we're talking about today. And then on my website, synccreation.com, there's a lot of free articles about energy healing, psychokinesis, a lot of what we've been talking about. And so you just click on previous articles and you can see a lot for free. And there's also individual meditations as downloads that are under $20 each that you could, Liquid Luck is a good place to start. Yes. A lot of people do that, and then they have an amazingly lucky day if that's to sell a property or win lottery tickets 3 days in a row, whatever they're doing. The Abundance Waterfall I mentioned, have a healing heart. So whatever your interests are, those are each, again, less than $20, and there's about 8 of them there that you could get a sample. And within that, there's a couple books there and on Amazon. One called Inner Vegas, Creating Miracles, Abundance, and Health. Talks about the science behind this and my experiences in casino. A book called Liquid Luck, The Good Fortune Handbook that came out after all the success with that meditation. One called Heaven is for Healing, What Tends to Happen Between Lives as You Leave a Life, the kind of healing that's available, particularly if it's been a rough death like suicide or violent death, how that's handled on the other side. So there's some books, and they're available on Audible, Kindle, and paperback on Amazon or on my website as paperbacks. So a lot of ways to get to learn a little more, and a lot of videos online. So I've been on Coast to Coast, I think 15 times. That's a fairly major show. A program called New Thinking Aloud. Been on there 7 times. So if you just Google Joe Gallenberger or Liquid Luck, you'll get there. And depending on what you want, some of it'll be free, some you got to pay a little bit for.
Yeah. Well, it's an incredible body of work that you've built and, affected a lot of people's lives, because a lot of people are concrete and they'll say they don't believe in other than the concrete existence that they have. And they don't, soul and spirit. And I mean, I've met people that they don't even know that they have a soul or a spirit and a spirit. And then even if they did know, they wouldn't believe in it anyway, because they're like, what is the difference there? Where's that line that keeps people, I always say keeps people from themselves, really?
Well, there's a lot of valid ways to be human. Yes. Okay, I think. But within the culture, there's a book, Science and Psychic Phenomena, The Fall of the House of Skeptics by Chris Carter. He's got a good discussion about this. What we see in science now is telepathy, which is being able to read each other's thoughts, precognition, which is be able to know the future, what's going to happen, remote viewing, which is be able to see things without regards to time or distance. Psychokinesis is affecting matter with your energy. All of these are what we would call Six Sigma events in science, and that the meta-analysis of all the studies together would say this would not occur even once in a billion by chance. But it's not believed by government very much, by press. And when you look at it, there's some organizations that say, oh, this is all bunk. They're debunkers. But their charter says we will not look at any data and we will not do our own experiments, and yet we proclaim that it's junk. And so that's handy for me because I can go to a casino and slot machines have those random number generators in them. And I can say to myself, I'd like a royal flush in hearts. I know statistically that's 160,000 to 1 by chance on a particular machine, and I can hit it in the first pull. So, we can allow that everybody who wants to be skeptical can be skeptical.
Yes.
Sometimes I think it can be that a pattern is a sensitive spirit person will marry somebody who's very concrete, and that person keeps them kind of grounded.
Yes.
So their loving spouse will say, "Do what you want, but I don't believe in any of that crap." Pardon the French. But that allows that person, because they weren't very good at grounding themselves, to have an anchor. So sometimes I think even the person that seems very much not believing in any of this, they have a role to play. And I'm fine with people saying, "Prove it, show me."
Yeah.
And I can show them electronic microscope pictures that the metal looks different bent by psychokinesis than by force. Or I can show them statistics or whatever, if they're open enough to look at that. But the best is for them to be holding metal in their own hand that they bought themselves, like the heaviest Oneida ware, and then feel it change and go like putty in their hand. Then that's going to be more belief system changing than somebody just telling them. Other times, there's Joe McMonagle is probably the world's best remote viewer, in my opinion. He was a remote viewer 001 in the government program. So his books are filled with the government authorizing this every year for 20 million or more, having a very vigorous review each year, whether it's effective. And that's how we found the Rain Contra, the hostages over in Iran, seeing Soviet submarines before they're launched, finding missing children, and just the data piles up that this stuff works. And so depending on the person's bent, you can maybe get them to at least consider it, but I'm not in the business of trying to shove it down their throat. The analogy I use is you go into a room and most people are sleeping and you start going, "Wake up, wake up." You're going to irritate a lot of people. But if you look around and some people are just starting to wake up and you go, "Good morning," they might smile and say, "Oh, thanks for being here. What's for breakfast?" Yeah. So in the waking up of consciousness as well, if you go around just trying to wake up the people most deeply asleep, it might be a good way to get in trouble, if you will.
Yes.
Okay.
It wouldn't be very popular.
Some people are ready,
Yeah, some people are ready. They've had an experience, or like for me, I've always had abilities, but when I had in my near-death experience, it came in more and more abilities came in. Yeah. So sometimes it's something like that as well, right?
Yeah.
It's a shift in your consciousness, an accident, a separation, a marriage separation, something that sort of tips you into thinking about things differently and feeling differently as well.
Yeah, but life events is one of the biggest reasons people come, say, to my workshops or Monroe workshops is they've had something happen in their family, they've had a near-death themselves, they've had a heart attack scare, they are retiring, and now what do I do with my life? There's some kind of shift. But now we're getting a lot more young people, too, who just are curiously activated early, maybe in their early 20s. Some of them, because they're influencers or what have you, they've made money quite quickly. Not all influencers make a lot of money, of course. But there's things that have allowed them to take a less traditional path than 60-hour week, in a factory or something. And so they're showing up as well now, which is good too. If open, there are now ways to learn about this stuff. And if open to work on your emotional issues, there's ways now that it may be easier to do than find a therapist in a small rural town. So there's a lot more pathways for a manifestation to take and growth to take. And I think things are accelerated, which is great.
And I mean, for our generation too, though, we needed to keep those abilities to ourselves. A lot of people didn't want to hear about them, didn't believe them.
Yeah.
They still don't,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you kind of, a part of you didn't express very often because you weren't in a group that
Yeah.
appreciated it.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's, again, as a therapist, when you work, people will work with you for a long time, and then maybe their symptom of depression, whatever it was, got better, and then they'll say, now you're going to think I'm crazy, doc, but I've never told anybody X. And that might be that they feel like they were abducted by aliens. It might feel like they saw their grandmother after she died. It might be who knows what. Or they had a near-death experience and they experienced the tunnel of light. But they'll often wait till you're just about ready to finish whatever you were working with, and they've had months to develop the trust in you that at least you'll keep your mouth shut about it, and maybe you won't think they're crazy. And but things are changing a little bit, and even with my grandkids now, maybe I'll take a deck of Uno cards, which are red, blue, yellow, green, and with my 8-year-old granddaughter, say, what's next? Red, blue, green, she get 10 in a row right. And then I can say, well, that, honey, is intuition. And this is other ways in life you could use intuition. Things are changing. But, we're pretty impatient creatures, at least I am.
Yes.
And when you really look at the amount of change in the last 100 years, it's vast.
It's vast.
I think we have some faith that in the next 20 years, some of this stuff may be more accepted. We may have we're doing brainwave studies now to see what goes on in the brain when somebody does psychokinesis or energy healing, neurophysiologically, what's going on in the heart field. And so things are being measured now much more and creating a chain of causation rather than, oh, this just happened. Now we can see the difference between faking it, fraud, and genuine, even physiologically in what we're seeing happen in people. And so that amount of data and information will begin to get out. And I think then it'll be easier to believe if you're on the more skeptical side.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure to be in your company again and to interview you and listen to. I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge. We'd have to speak for a whole day longer, probably, in order to.
I'm a gabber. Yeah, I can talk.
No, well, just you have so much wisdom, and you've grown this body of work. You've grown yourself, and it's what people need to hear. It really is. So I thank you so much.
My pleasure, Rhonda. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you for listening and being part of the journey with Nature of Consciousness, your host, Rhonda Grant. Theme song is composed and performed by John Park Wheeler.